Hi everybody, so we are in the gym in the building 2 in Upper Riverside in Greenwich Peninsula, and we have invited Robert from NLP. He's going to be sharing with us how you can save tax when you buy a property in the UK. We also have Wing. She's going to join us as a co-host from Dragon. Are you ready? So Robert, NLP has such a long history and one of the most important players in the accounting field. Can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Nyman Libson Paul is a creative and imaginative firm of accountants and tax advisors, and we put our clients first. We've been around for some 90 years and specialise in the entertainment industry and indeed deal with many famous people, and we use that knowledge to help our clients in all fields, in all sectors, especially property and including people who are investing from the Far East.
Speaking from a residential buyer's perspective, some of the questions that we receive is what are some types of taxes that they should take into consideration?
There are 4 main taxes that you need to consider. There's stamp duty land tax on purchasing the property, there's income tax on the receipt of rental income, there's capital gains tax when the property is sold, and finally there's inheritance tax if you're still holding the property when you die.
As tax as mentioned, at the first stage, when people purchase property, what kind of tax do they need to consider?
Let's break this down between resident and non-resident purchasers. So someone living here in the UK is going to have to consider stamp duty land tax, which ranges from 0% to 15%, and that's paid by the purchaser of the property. Similarly, for a non-resident purchaser, they also have to consider stamp duty land tax, but for them, there will be an additional 2% stamp duty payable for a non-resident purchaser.
So with letting property, apart from the general council tax, is there any other tax people need to consider?
For a landlord here in the UK, receiving rental income is liable to taxed income tax on the profits that they make from letting the property. For a UK resident, they will be liable to tax on the first £12,500 is tax-free. The next £37,500 is taxed at 20%. Then at 40% for the next 100,000, and then finally for income above 150,000, they're taxed at 45%. That's the highest rate. For a non-resident landlord, the same tiered rates are applicable. However, it is very likely that they will be unable to claim the first 12,500 tax-free element, depending on where they are resident.
So from the lettings point of view, if there's rental income, are there any expenses that the owner can expense back? Certainly,
there are a number of expenses that you can claim. So there's the obvious expenses, the ones such as your agent's fees, such as redecoration costs, advertising, insurance, I could go on. There are costs for replacing any fixtures or fittings within the apartment. And in addition, I suppose the most important one is mortgage interest, although the relief you can get on the interest that you pay on the loan that you've taken out to purchase the property is restricted, unfortunately, to only 20%.
So how do the buyer go about filing the tax, and how do they get paid? And also, can they do it abroad? And do they need to give some kind of notice as well?
A tax return has to be filed after the end of each tax year. The tax year runs from the 6th of April one year to the 5th of April the next, and the filing deadline is the 31st of January after the end of the tax year. In terms of paying the tax is mainly due in 2 instalments. The 31st of January within the tax year, and then the 31st of July after the end of the tax year. And if there's any balancing tax due, then that is payable the 31st of January, again after the end of the tax year. That is something that we, as accountants, that's our job, that we will calculate for you and advise you exactly on what is payable and when.
So if a buyer purchases for self-occupancy and they live in the property, are they liable for any taxes?
The simple answer is no. Of course, there's never a simple answer in tax, but there should be no capital gains taxes because a main residence is free of capital gains tax. And if you're not letting out the property, then there's no income tax to pay because you're not receiving any income. However, it does depend on a few factors, depending on how long you live in the property, depending on whether you're UK resident, and also you need to make sure, if you're living in the property, that the purchase is made in your own personal name and certainly not to use a company.
So finally, if the buyer wants to sell property, what kind of tax they need to remember?
On a sale of a property here in the UK, A UK resident or a non-resident individual has to pay capital gains tax based on the difference between the proceeds and the original cost that they paid for the property. However, if they are non-resident, then they only have to pay tax on the increase in value since April 2015 if they purchased the property prior to that date. The tax rate, just to give you all the detail, either 18% or 28%, depending on the level of your income, will determine whether it's at the lower or the higher rate.
So Robert, you guys work with so many famous people, all around the world in the UK. So what's the biggest amount you have helped to save?
A few years ago, we took on a brand new client, an A-list celebrity from quite a small accountant who obviously lacked the experience in understanding how you can claim for foreign tax credits here in the UK. Within 2 weeks of us taking over, we were able to go round to the client's house with a cheque from the tax office for just under £1 million. Wow. We've been best friends ever since.
Amazing, fantastic. So when you have living all around the world in different cities, so what's the top 3 reasons you choose London to live?
Well, originally from the US and then lived in Shanghai for 11 years. One of the first key reasons was air quality. Moving from Shanghai to London is a major difference in air quality. Second of all is education. We have 3 children, and the UK is renowned for its education. And thirdly is work-life balance. That's really a lifestyle change that we've really embraced.